The discussion between Star Wars fans has always been a bit weird, but I did discover something over these last few weeks. What if I told you that a big portion of the Star Wars fandom aren't actually fans of Star Wars itself, but they're fans of the idea of Star Wars? That makes sense? And before I go on, no, this is not just about the Acolyte. I mean, I think that is fine. I really enjoy episode 5, but if you're disappointed or you don't like it, that's fine. Everything isn't going to be for everybody. However, I am talking to the ones that claim Disney destroyed Star Wars and how we need to go back to the glory days. I just have one huge question. When exactly were the glory days of Star Wars? Like, we can point to the glory days of the MCU because they built up 10 years straight of mostly goodwill. I'm not too sure that we can say that about Star Wars. So let's take away the Disney era of Star Wars because that seems to be a lot of people's sticking point at the moment. Are we calling the prequels the glory days? The prequels were my favorite movies throughout the entire series. And yes, it is getting its proper due now, but let's not rewrite history. Jake Lloyd was ran out of Hollywood because of the harassment he received, and that hate even trickled down to Hayden Christensen. And people were actually convinced that he didn't know how to act because of George Lucas's bad writing. There was complaints about how it was too political, how we all knew that Palpatine was Darth Sidious, and I don't even want to start on the midichlorians. So I don't think that that will be considered the glory days either. So now I guess we have to go back almost 50 years to the original trilogy and dig up the glory days from there. I mean, a lot of Star Wars fans say yes, that was the glory days. That was when Star Wars was at its peak. I mean, it gave us one of the best reveals in all of cinema history. And also, if you're a lifelong Star Wars fan, this was your introduction into the franchise. You came right from the start. Here's the problem though. I would say a lot of core Star Wars fans weren't around in the 70s or 80s. Or if we were around, we actually didn't appreciate it until much later in life. And yes, are those good movies? Yes, I mean, I would argue that Return of the Jedi is a lot lower on the totem pole. But other than that, those movies also had their flaws. The awkward dialogue, the clear retconning from movie to movie. Oh, and if you hated Jar Jar Binks and Porgs, well, let me introduce you to Ewoks. My overall thought process is that right now there is no glory days of Star Wars because it seems like each group of the fandom has their own era that they would consider the best of the times. And yes, that includes the Disney era. Say what you want about Disney, Star Wars, and yes, they have had several missteps, but just to act like everything before Disney Star Wars was perfect and great and we all were living in harmony, that is just an abject lie. I'm not saying that we shouldn't hold studios and their writers accountable for writing or just rush projects, but what I am saying is when we hold a certain movie or a certain era up here, when those also had their mistakes, when those also had their own haters, you're just repeating a cycle that Star Wars is in right now. But that's just my theory. I really feel like when Star Wars fans start coming together, start putting eras together, start putting different areas of the fandoms together, then that's when conversations and dialogue can be less toxic. Comment below, let me know. I'm sure everybody's gonna be very nice and polite in the comments. I'll see you soon. Bye.